Welcome back to another GPU mid-off video. This time we're going to be testing out Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced on 3 different GPUs comparison. Like that's what the GPU mid-off series is about, where I compare 3 different GPUs from 3 different manufacturers, Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, obviously, and in the mid-range category with similar kind of performance to see how they go against each other. So this time it's Black Flag Resynced. So let me show you the contenders. So for Team Blue, we got the Intel Arc B580, the Intel reference version of the GPU, 12GB. And for AMD, we got RX 9060 XT 16GB version of the GPU, Asus Prime. And then finally for Team Green, we got the 5060 Ti 16GB. So everything is about 8GB, no 8GB cards here. So yeah, these are the best cards in the market for mid-range GPUs, but yeah, the prices are going up. Can't do nothing about it. But if you can get 16GB versions for cheap, best off. Those are the 3 GPUs that I'll be testing, like in the other previous GPU mid-off videos. So you can see all the specs on the screen right now. So you guys can pause the screen and take a look at it. All the specs, the GPU Z specs for all 3 GPUs and all the... It's all paired up with the i5-12400F and 32GB of DDR4 memory running at 3200 MHz. I know it's a mid-range CPU for these mid-range GPUs to make it a little bit more fair instead of just going with the 9800 XVD. And I just wanted to see how it's going to be on mid-range CPUs, on the mid-range PC. So that's about it. That's all the intro. And usually I test the games out on 4 different categories if they have it. So this game has all 4 different categories: raster performance, ray tracing performance, frame gen, and upscaling. So on their respective upscalers. So for Intel, it's going to be XeSS, Nvidia DLSS, and AMD FSR. So you guys get the idea. So that's it. So let's jump into it and see how each of these cards perform. First up, we got the Raster Performance category, where we use only the native settings at 4K, 4040p, and 1080p. So starting it off at 4K. And on the B580 and all 3 GPUs, it's going to be the same settings. Everything maxed out, native settings, depending on their upscalers. And that's it. Everything's maxed out ultra high without ray tracing. So that's the first category across all 3 different resolutions. All right, so before I jump into one more thing on Nvidia cards, I know it's better to just use preset K, just forcefully use it inside the Nvidia app. But for this test, everything is going to be in-game. I didn't change anything inside any app or override anything inside the app. Everything is based on in-game settings. Okay, I just had to put that out there in case if you were confused. So no modification inside the Nvidia app or the Adrenaline app or anything. It's just the same settings across all the board. So, and starting it off on 4K, you guys can see the B580 is barely averaging 25 to 26 FPS. The 9060 XT and 5060 Ti getting 30 plus FPS. In this scenario over here, in this aerial view kind of, before doing the synchronization at the top of the church. And all of them are like using about 10 GB of VRAM almost. So yeah, the B580 is lagging behind. Of course, it's a 12 GB card compared to the 16 GB on the other 2. So it makes sense. And it's really intensive as well. And now moving on to 1440p, the same thing. Across the board, you can see all the settings right here. You guys can pause the screen if you want to check the settings. Everything is still native and ultra high settings without ray tracing. And again, on the same scenario, I chose the scenarios because it gives you the entire view of the whole first map, and it's pretty intensive. So that's why I chose this area. But anyways, you guys can see it. From 30, we are up to 40 FPS on the B580 without ray tracing, and 9060 XT and 5060 Ti are pretty head-to-head. Maybe the 5060 Ti is about 5% faster in this scenario. And that's about it. But they're like pretty head-to-head on this situation right here. Getting close to 50 to 60 FPS. And yeah, B580 is doing pretty good job for its price point. And now for the 1080p, it's the same thing. You guys can pause the video as much as you want to check the settings. Everything is the same across the board. And then when it comes to the performance, B580 is now up to 40s from the 35s to 40s, like it's like pretty much averaging 45 FPS. Meanwhile, the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti, they are like above 60 FPS. The 5060 Ti is like getting not a huge jump, but still better than the 9060 XT at this point, which is a good sign, you know. Usually the 9060 XT is slightly better at raster performance without ray tracing, but in this case, 5060 Ti is doing a pretty good job, you know. I think it's like purely more optimized for Nvidia cards, but anyways, the 5060 Ti has the slight advantage here. So that's it. That's all the raster performance on all three resolutions. Seems like the 5060 Ti is doing the best job there, right there. Now moving on to the ray tracing category. The raster performance category, surprisingly the 5060 Ti took the lead. Again, I'm expecting the same kind of results over here for ray tracing because, you know, it's Nvidia. Nvidia always gets ahead of the other two competitors when it comes to ray tracing because they were the industry lead. You know, they're the ones who introduced this tech in the first place. So I don't expect anything bad from Nvidia. They're going to be in the lead. Let's see. And like I said, look at the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti. They're both head-to-head in the scenario. But again, the 5060 Ti is slightly better. Maybe like 1 or 2 FPS better, but that's about it. Again, the 9060 XT is really holding up really well. The B580 is not that bad either. You know, for $250, you can't ask for more, especially at 4K with ray tracing and everything maxed out. Yeah, this is all right for a GPU like that. But none of the GPUs are playable at 20 FPS. So let's see now the 1440p settings. Again, everything is same across the board. Extended ray tracing and everything maxed out, and native upscaling. So 1440p, we are saying slightly better improvement, getting that 30 FPS mark, you know, console level experience, but still not that great. The 9060 XT and 5060 Ti are like barely playable, so with some upscaling you can actually make it work. Still not gonna be a 60 FPS solid experience, unfortunately. The game is like really intensive and it looks beautiful too. So, but the B580 is like barely hitting that 30 FPS, especially when you take the leap of faith from a high point. Yeah, it's a little rough. Now finally 1080p. So any of these cards trying to max it out with ray tracing is a bad idea, especially in 1440p or 1080p as well. It is slightly on the rougher edges, especially on the B580. But the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti, they're able to pull it off a little bit. You can get 60 FPS, but again, it's not going to be steady 60 FPS. You're still going to see some, you know, dipping here and there. So it's better to use some upscaling if you want to play it on maxed out settings on the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti. But yeah, it's pretty nice to see it's getting the 60 FPS, but the B580 is like lagging 20 FPS behind. But again, that's expected. It's not a ray tracing focused card, and it's not that capable of rendering stuff on a higher level like the 9060 XT or 5060 Ti. But it's good to see what the best Intel card can do at 1080p on latest games. So that's about it for the ray tracing comparison. B580 is slightly behind as usual. 9060 XT and 5060 Ti are again head-to-head on the competition. 5060 Ti has the slighter edge, so as expected. So that's about it. Now let's move on to the upscaling and frames-in category. Now next, we're going to be using some upscaling. So for upscaling settings, I usually go for balanced settings across the board and at 1440p. Why 1440p? Because 1440p is the most used resolution in 2026, and anybody with a GPU 9060 XT or 5060 Ti are gonna have a 1440p monitor. Okay, so even the B580, even though it's more used for 1080p, it can still do 1440p. So that's why I'm going for 1440p here. Balanced upscaling depending on their respective upscalers, and high settings, no ray tracing or anything, just high preset, and that's about it. You can see we are getting 60 plus FPS on all of these GPUs, even in the fight scenes. So pretty stable FPS. You can see the frame time graph is really smooth and steady, even averaging 69 FPS on the B580. The 9060 XT and the 5060 Ti, they're like way above the scale, you can see like 90 to 95 FPS on both of those cards, which is amazing to see. So if you use some upscaling and use a slightly lower graphic preset, you can pretty much play the game really smoothly, no issues whatsoever. And all of them are using around 7 GB of VRAM as well, so pretty great experience across the board. Even the B580 is able to hold up steady 60 FPS, so that's a win across the board. Oh yeah, one more thing, since we are using their respective upscalers here, the image quality will be different compared to Nvidia. Nvidia is going to be slightly more sharper than FSR and XeSS from what I've observed. So if you want to change that, you can customize it inside the menu and use some optimized settings to make it customizable to your likings. But here we're just going with whatever the game has thrown at us, and they all are playable, on the same settings. So take it as you want and change the settings as you like. If you don't like the image quality, you can bump it up. It's up to you, but here everything is playable. All right. Okay, now we're going to move on to the final category, which is going to be using some frame gen. And unfortunately, AMD has no multi-frame gen. It only sticks to 2x frame gen, even in 2026. So I'm going to have to base off all the other GPUs with 2x frame gen as well. Because, it's going to be unfair for AMD if I just go to 2x or 4x frame gen on the other two and just use 2x on AMD. It's not going to make any sense. So to make it fair, everything's going to be 2x frame gen, quality upscaling, and high settings again. So let's see. You can see the B580 pretty strong, getting 90 something FPS upscale from 44. You can see in the Steam overlay right there. But you can see the frame time graph on the B580 is a little iffy. It doesn't feel as smooth as the other ones. And yes, you can feel the rubber banding kind of effect on the B580, which kind of sucks. So the only resolution to that is actually using 3x or 4x frame gen, which seems to make the frame time graph as smooth as possible. But on the 9060 XT and the 5060 Ti, it's super playable, even on 2x frame gen, and getting pretty much the same performance, like 115 to 120 FPS, depending on the scenario you were in. So pretty solid performance on the 9060 XT or 5060 Ti. You can even bump it up to maybe very high and still get a really playable experience, because you can get 60 FPS base speeds here with high settings. So yeah, those two cards are like really running the game with the frame gen and some upscaling, but that's about it. All three GPUs can manage this game with some upscaling and frame gen pretty well. So there you have it. But yeah, the B580 will be slightly behind because it's not that capable of providing more raw performance. So there you have it, the three GPUs from the three different manufacturers going head to head against each other. Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comment section. For me, all these cards are pretty good, pretty decent at what they're doing. The B580 is still a really good GPU in 2026, even like it's almost late 2026. It's holding up, especially, but you definitely need some upscaling and a little bit of frame gen to make most games playable these days. That's how it is. Most games are like pretty unoptimized when they come out of the box. They are like usually optimized for upscaling and frame gen. So if you have the option for it, just use it. I don't see any point in not using them, because games are not going to get any better. The texture quality, size, and everything is going to make the games even more demanding to run. So at least you have 12 GB of VRAM on the B580 to make games run without a lot of stuttering. So that's a win in my books. And for $250, it's definitely the best budget GPU still in the third quarter of 2026. So yeah, Intel's holding up. And for the 9060 XT and 5060 Ti, they're always usually head to head when it comes to the performance. And ray tracing, the 5060 Ti slightly has an edge because, it's Nvidia and they focus on ray tracing and all of that. It's an RTX card. So it makes more sense in that regard. Other than that, the 9060 XT is also a really solid card. But yeah, it all depends on the price point and where you are living. And sometimes the 16 GB is going to, crank up the price point to even higher than a card from 5 years ago, like the 3080 Ti, which you can get for the same price, and also maybe having better performance, raw performance. The only downside to the 3080 Ti is the 12 GB of VRAM, but that thing can still outperform these two GPUs if it's on 1440p or even a 4K with some upscaling. So it all depends where you are, guys. So for me, I'd say still the best price to performance GPU is going to be the B580. That thing is amazing. Yeah, Performance-wise, there's no question. It's either the 9060 XT or the 5060 Ti, depending on your needs. If you like Nvidia more and like better, crisper image quality and all of that, Nvidia might be a better choice and also better for ray tracing. But if it's a 9060 XT, it's pretty good for native Raster Performance and all of that. Yeah, they're both really good GPUs, man. I don't know why I'm trying to make this video longer than it should be, but you guys get the idea. So that's it. That's about it for Black Flag Resynced comparison GPU mid-off. Hope you guys liked it. If you liked, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more benchmarks like these and comparisons. And yeah, catch you guys next one. So take it easy and peace out.